Welcome to Healthcare Horizons with Rex Prabhu, where I discuss innovation, practical ideas, and the future of medical practice. Join me as I delve into stories of people, profession, as well as practice, from rural healthcare to advancement of global healthcare, as well as trends in Australia, offering fresh perspectives and actionable results for leaders in the field. Today we have a great guest for the first episode. He's a very special person who embodies the intersection of healthcare leadership and creative innovation. He's a man of many talents, a visionary in healthcare administration, and a coach for the next generation of medical leaders, and an acclaimed Indian filmmaker and producer. Please welcome the President-elect candidate for the Royal Australasian College of Medical Administrators, Director of Medical Services, and filmmaker Anand Ponniraivan. Thanks Anand for making it.
No problem. Pleasure being here. Thank you.
So you've had a very incredible journey through medicine, through leadership and filmmaking. I want to break that down. How, what were the inspirations to get into medicine?
Where I started from, the inspirations went pointing towards medicine. It was an open scope back where I come from in India, south of India. Culturally, there's only three big things for us, which is cricket, politics, and movies, right? So, growing up, this is what we had to look up to, and then sort of people change careers as they go along. My mum's a doctor, and she was a medical administrator herself. So it runs in the family, but
right.
Just like any other children growing up in that sort of early 80s and 90s, there's a sort of societal pressure as to this is what your children grow up to be. And that's what I fell into as well. So there wasn't any big plan to get into medicine, but I was fortunate enough that I got into medicine. I just got into medicine in terms of academic-wise. So after that, it was still, to be honest, I don't think I quite understood what the profession was until at least after I finished internship.
Sure.
And it's only after I started becoming a junior doctor I sort of had an affirmative that this is the right profession for me and I'm in the right place. Going back to your question, there was an inspiration. I wasn't planning to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Thinking back, it's hindsight's easy. I could probably say I wanted to be a leader.
Yeah.
Couldn't quite figure out what that was.
Sure.
Yeah.
They often say elements of leadership come from, as you grow up, and you said your mother was a medical administrator as well.
Yeah.
Did that somehow play a role in moving from medicine to medical leadership?
Not at all. And that's the fascinating part about life in general is I like to keep it simple. I think, we have enough things to plan for when we have family and children and other things. The rest, if you leave it open, it's such a fascinating thing. You never get bored about the positives and the challenges you see in personal and professional life. I actually, it didn't occur to me that mum was a medical administrator because she was biochemistry was her passion. So she was a teacher in the first place before she became a medical administrator. So it wasn't connected at all, but I'm sure there's a link to it. But career-wise, I wasn't looking for medical administration, even in late stage, sort of after doing a number of years in surgery.
Sure.
No, it wasn't a planned thing at all. No.
Yeah.
No.
What made the flip, or was there a change in point, or were there elements where you thought you could work with the system in a better way? Was there any points of inspiration?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a few elements to it. One, like you're in your sort of late 20s, and I wasn't a high achiever. I've always been the average person, and then wait for the time and then sort of make my mark, sort of thing. And even this sort of where I am currently has happened to be an accidental sort of position uplift in all sorts of ways. So I think the shift was really life lessons and where life took me. Many people will relate to this. Growing up as a junior doctor, at least in Australian healthcare system, everyone gets into different heights of frustration. For me personally, it was those long hours, and I'm talking about in the 2000s and 2005 to 2010, where we only had one doctor manning, thinking about Monash Health where I work in, the whole hospital or even a couple of sites. It's a very rewarding experience where you spend hours and hours. Sometimes we used to do 72-hour shifts without a break. But then you come on the other side and you see all these poor outcomes.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was the breaking point.
Yeah.
You can do all the training, you can get all the money you want, get all the letters next to you, but that's the convention, that's the 90% folks.
Sure.
For me, that was always a question that I needed to answer.
Sure.
I asked my bosses, they said, well, I don't know, go ask my boss. And then that direction led me to the chief medical officer.
Yeah.
Back in 2007.
Sure.
And again, I didn't have any plans back then, and I went and met the CMO office people. And the usual concepts of, this is how leadership is, management just came about.
Yeah.
So no one actually could give me an answer.
Yeah, sure.
And then politics, I have an interest in politics, and the level of systemic failures and how people don't think it's our responsibility at an individual level, being part of a system struck me. And I've always believed in the thinking where if you want to see change, you be part of the change, or you be the first step. So that was the shift. And then it so happened that we were newly married, my wife and I, and we took a year off and went and traveled in different countries in Africa and South America. And that gave me perspective.
Sure.
And I sort of had a wake-up call. What am I doing? Trying to run in the treadmill. So when I came back, I just dropped the ambition to become a surgeon.
Sure.
I was very close.
Yeah.
And then decided to look alternative ways. And then a friend of mine said, there's a college.
Yeah.
So this is how I didn't even know there was a college to train doctors to be leaders. Yeah.
And that's the case of most of us.
It is.
Even my journey has been just in a moment. Somebody introduced me to the college, and the rest is history. Yeah. About filmmaking, and that's a very creative side to be in. Where did that spark come from, or was it something that always was existed, in a bit of you and in a bit of your journey?
I think yes, it has always been there. Even in high school, and I'm not saying that I was the creative person. I was the one out of many. A country with that sort of dense population, pretty much 95% of children and adolescent kids who grow up have this aspiration. They either want to be a politician or a filmmaker or a cricketer, right? Yeah, so it's absolutely. Just natural tendency. You see what's out there. So I'm sure that was there. I don't think I had that sort of depth of creativity in me. I'm a very sort of visual. When it comes to being creative, I'm very visual. So I can visual conceptualizing is something that I enjoy doing. I'm not a good writer. I don't read, but I can put things together in mind and then get people to do that for me. So that was my strength. So we used to write lots of scripts in high school, and after doing it, even in uni, we get close to a lot of filmmakers because, we invite them to a college function and whatnot. So that was just the fun part. And there was a real drive to get into movies. I didn't get into medicine in my first attempt at 17. So there was a gap of 6 months. So I decided this is a good thing. And then I told my parents, and they just said that that's just a joke. You can't, it's this, there was a stigma, like you can't, it's a bad thing. You cannot be a filmmaker. It's we're sort of a civil family, and that sort of, that still exists, but it was worse back then.
Yeah, sure.
You can't break the boundaries and get out of the house and do those stuff. Yeah. So I just put a lid on it and then got into medicine. We were still pursuing it. It was one part of me which never went away. So there was something lacking. And, as you progress, I went to the UK, trained for a bit, and then came to Australia, met my wife at work before we got married, and then everything else was history. After we got married, when we were traveling, we had long chats, and then it was in fact my wife who said, there's still something missing.
Get this out of your body.
That's right. So you're not 100% yet. You're happy, but I don't see that. And I didn't realize, but when someone tells you, you then sort of reflect on it. And she was the one who gave me the push to do it. And so that's where it started. So when I started training in RACMA, I took the year off in year 2. So I did first year. And then in second year, I took the year off. And it all sort of organically happened. A group of filmmakers wanted to do something, and I was trying to find them a producer. And then we talked, and then I ended up doing it as my own. But it was also the inspiration that and the confidence I had from my first year of training in medical leadership that gave me that sort of overview of project management.
Yeah.
I took a bold move. Project management, is a concept.
Yeah.
It's not a specific thing.
Yeah.
You learn the art, or you understand the art. You take some risky moves.
Sure.
And I did it. So that's how it started. So after 17 years, I was able to, fulfill my dream.
Sure.
And it's still open.
Yeah, great. I want to explore your journey, and you've worked in very different settings throughout your career, be it public, private, regional, rural, urban, metro, tertiary.
Yeah.
Over the years, you've probably seen a lot of challenges and opportunities. What's the one, if you were given a magic wand to work with a solution, what would that solution be? I know there's a lot of problems in the health system, and there's a lot of opportunities as well.
Yeah.
But if there's something that you would think differently that could be, could work together, or is there something that you would think of?
As in healthcare.
In healthcare, in general.
Profession.
Yeah.
You need to have people and constantly have the drive to find people, find talent. I think talent acquisition is something we don't do well. We don't do well at all in health, at least in public health service. Private's different. We seem to get stuck with that concept of, safe job safety, unions, which is all fair, which is all, an essential part of our system. But there isn't a proactive drive. And I'm talking about not a group or an executive. My organization has 20,000 employees, and at least it's made up of, 200 leaders, so to speak, 6 executives. At least even if that 200 leadership group constantly, individually goes out and starts to think, how can I make my people happy now, but how can I also upskill them? But how do I look for more talent within, outside? That drive isn't there. And that's because that's how we're all trained, and we all grow up in that system, and it's risk-taking. So I think when you have new talent, when you have new ideas, when you have new failures,
correct,
that gives you a good picture of reality. So we don't end up in a situation like where we are now, where obvious human disasters, obvious pandemics means that you end up in recession, you end up in financial crisis. My 6-year-old son can put that together. You know what I mean? We don't need to graduate, we don't need to do medicine to be able to diagnose that. It's pretty common sense. But we're very reactive. That was my take. So I don't think any solution can work until we radically change the way we think and also influence our people.
I think for the people who are not medical professionals, they see healthcare as buildings. But your paradigm is people. People and as talent, and to make sure they get the right growth, identify them, nurture them, and allow those ideas to come up.
Absolutely.
And that's the solutions that we have. The solutions are already there. I have really enjoyed your mentorship over the years, having moved from New South Wales and coming to Victoria as a second-year medical director in a new role, and joining a new cohort. And at that point of time, and even till today, you've been the coordinator of training for medical directors out there. And medical director, those jobs that we do perform day to day, they are high pressure jobs. They've got inherent risks because we've got risks of the system. We don't have risks of individual patients, but that overall risk, we are that end of the line when it comes to those risks that we take. What do you see, training the new generation of medical administrators? What do you see that we lack at the moment, and the opportunities to progress? What direction should we be taking to grow the next generation of medical leaders?
I think thinking about 2024 as of now, and not even going back to 4 or 5 years ago, or even when I finished my fellowship, I think the key point is the landscape and the environment is always important, because it's not just about a college of medical administrators. It's not just about doctors. It's much more broader than that. The younger generation, the grads, the young doctors that graduate now, what they see and feel and aspire to be is completely different from even the immediate previous generation 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case. Evolution wasn't like that. It was very slow before. I graduated in 2001. Our group wasn't too different from 20 years ago.
Sure.
Right? So now it's different in 5 years' time. So that's a massive change. And it's about adapting to that customer. I call it customer because these are the customers for the purpose of this conversation. If we say these are the trainees or the potential trainees are the customers or the users, and it's important to understand what they want and what they don't want, and then to work out how can we pitch our brand. So coming to where we are, before we go to what do we lack, is I think, again, not just our college, most colleges are sitting in that conventional space. Right? We've established, years ago, all of these Royal Australasian colleges were established. Massive amount of work from our predecessors, great. We're fortunate enough to be able to have a fellowship like this and progress in career, right? But I think this is a time for us to push the pedal at a pace that we never really thought about. Because if we don't, then we're at risk of not just losing brand value, but potential opportunities. It's almost a risk of we're not actually showing our younger generation what's the scope, how big is the scope. The way this cohort of doctors, the current generation, see this training or any training is in a sort of a very stereotyped manner where I finish medicine, I do this, and then I get into this, I become this specialist.
Correct.
And then these are the job opportunities, right? So that's just a sort of a conventional way of thinking. We have to make it more enticing. And I'm coming to our college. We are the leaders. We are the leaders in our profession. Just such a huge opportunity. It comes with a lot of respect, power, and sort of responsibility. But I'm not sure if that's being perceived at that level across the board. So I think if it's almost like a reset. Do a stock take. Why? At the moment, we're doing the process mapping in a way that we've always done. Why are trainees coming and why are they not continuing? Why are we not able to attract more trainees?
Sure.
I'd like to think in a different way to see who are these trainees, who are these people in the first place, and maybe that'll give us more ideas. We can get creative in how we structure our program. It doesn't have to be in the same way. So I think there's lots of opportunities, but it's just changing that, almost radically changing the status quo in many ways.
And, this purpose of, having well-being and making sure the well-being of not just doctors, but also the next level, the well-being of directors, the well-being of executives and those aspects, because being the leader, you have to demonstrate resilience. And, where do we kind of, see that support systems and, supporting each other as well as the well-being of our healthcare workers? Have we come to a point that we are just neglecting those aspects in healthcare in general, or is there opportunity to do more as employers and as leaders and things like that?
I think I think there's more we can do. There's enough. I think the frame is there. We don't have to invest too much. We don't have to change anything. Just thinking about directors or trainees, RACMA trainees, most of them are directors of medical services and chief medical officers that at least in the last 5 years in my time, I didn't have any major plans, but I knew that there was only two things that I was going to do. And those two things were the things that I didn't get as a trainee.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm the last person, if you want to get a high distinction, I'm the last person you talk to.
Sure.
I'll probably just get you through. If you are about to fail, I'll get you through. That's as good as my standard can go to. There are people with different skills who can coach you to get all these things. But I support is something that I grew up with, and it's very fundamental. And as a trainee back then, not just me, a bunch of us, we were sort of lost for a number of years. Thankfully, we had each other, so we sort of navigated through the system, bounced off each other's problems, and then got through. This is even before the stress of exam. I'm talking about life problems, and if you have children, that comes with other complexities. And then if your partner is a doctor, and then they're progressing through career. So basic things seem simple on the outside, but it's a massive life changes. And then the college doesn't, if the college doesn't have systems to support trainees in training progression, finding jobs. So these are some of the things that we went through. So when I took on this role as a coordinator of training in Victoria, I knew that I was going to do at least these two. Everything else was just, whatever I can do and whoever I can get me to help, get to help. So I think support, and I think if you have that sort of approach and you make it up front, people start trusting the person, and then eventually trust the system. So 2019, when Michael Kirk and I took over as co-JCTs, and then Michael did that for a few months and he moved to Queensland, we started with just setting up meetings just to chat with candidates. The first 3 months, there was a lot of pressure on us and criticism or questioning. We're running a state program and we can't just be too casual about this. And I said, well, no one's actually asked them the question how they are. What are you doing? Do you know your job? So we spent the first 3 months literally meeting with the candidates every week on Zoom, in person, just chatting.
I remember aspects of training in the other state, and you have pressure on the station at on a Friday afternoon, and you've got to answer, and they're asking you questions. Whereas when I came to Victoria, it was let's all see this problem together and put our heads around it, which I think put a lot of the candidates at ease. And I think that's a part of teaching that we learn. Don't make the person nervous because they're not going to perform at the highest level if they fear. Or what do I need to know because I'm not sure about this, but I want to learn. Talking about flexibility in the next generation of workforce, flexibility in life, flexibility in the roles that we do, finding diversity of the workplace. How are we as health systems and leaders adapting to this?
I think we're getting there slowly. We're in as a system as a whole, I feel like we are in a much better place collectively, as a collective, than what we were even, 5 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. Back about, around 10 years ago, we needed something like the Royal College of Surgeons, the inquiry, and then the whole heap of work Rex did, which came up with a recommendation. So that was the norm. That was the sort of typical trigger back then. These days, there's a bit more sort of proactive approach by everyone, whether it's health services or colleges or organizations. So I think we are in the right track. It's more about how do you pick up the momentum and pace up. Things like diversity, inclusion, and cultural safety and well-being aren't just a coffee chat concepts, right? So these are about people. These are about culture. This is about identity. And that's bloody damn serious. And we can't sit in a corporate meeting room and strategize that and write 100 pages of paper and then just keep talking about the same thing in meetings. I think that's where we lose people. The first time someone talks about, I care about this group, me as a leader cares about this community, people connect to you. The second time you talk about it, they listen. But the 20th time you talk about it, they just walk past you because you're just talking.
Yeah.
So I think it has to be personal.
Yeah.
We have to find the right people to do these things. Like, for Indigenous health, for example, how we're all taught about how to do the basics.
Yeah.
You don't do anything in that space without having the right representation, right?
Yeah.
That was taught to us because, for me, it was fascinating learning, migrating outside my country, coming here and knowing about the First Nations and how structured that learning was.
Yeah.
So that's great, fantastic, right? But then we can't rely on that level of systemic change or structure for the other communities or the cultural, we're living in that sort of cultural diversity. So we kind of need to be more personal. Everyone has to do it. And I think it has to start with the leaders.
Yeah.
If you're a director of medical service, what's your platform? Who are the teams? And if you're looking after workforce, it's your doctors. And, it doesn't just mean gender diversity. Gender diversity is one part of it. There's cultural differences. There's migrant...
There's biases as well.
Yeah,
there's a lot of biases.
Exactly.
Yeah, at every level of the...
So heaps.
Yeah.
Gender is one part.
Yeah.
It's not... And not disregarding anything. There's so many layers to it. And unless and until we bring everything together, it's not diversity. It's excluding in diversity. We're parking things and then handling one thing at a time. That's not how it works. People aren't going to wait. Generations won't wait. Yeah.
It's talking about diversity of candidates in training, not just training with our college, but training in every other college. And sometimes there's a lot of selection biases towards it. Why is it important that we have to go beyond our biases? And what's the future of making sure that we have a diverse group of people working together?
I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure if we can eliminate bias completely. That's just human nature, right? So again, it depends how we define bias in this context. I come from a different cultural background. Someone else sitting and listening to us might think we both come from the same cultural background.
Yeah,
There's huge differences between where I come from and you come from.
Absolutely.
We're a few hours away where we grew up in India. Do you know what I mean? That's the definition.
Yeah,
so I think it's about the perception. I don't think we need to radically change the way how our system is structured. I think we have enough framework there to say, if you're doing an interview, these are the things you look at. It has to be a fair process. I think like things like if your family member is in the shortlist, do the right thing. That's sort of the obvious things. But I don't think we have to consciously change people based on their cultural background. But there's got to be some amount of trust. That's where I see. That's the future that I want to see.
Finding a balance.
Finding the balance and being confident and trusting. I want to be able to confidently put hand on heart and tell the future trainees and the current trainees in RACMA that this is a safe place. There might be different sort of efficiencies, inefficiencies, process issues, challenges you go through as a trainee, and you might have frustration. That's different, but this is a safe place, and you can only call it a safe place when there's transparency from the bottom up to top, right through. We want to be able to tell a candidate who wants to join RACMA that this is the process. You go in you come in the queue, you'll have a fair shot.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know, that's the future that I want to get to.
Sure.
Not having to find out, understand, read about. Oh, this is how they do the interviews. This is how they select. This is the board. This is what the interview panel is going to be like. I want to be, if I'm a candidate, I want to be able to trust the system and just put my effort into what I need to do.
Sure.
I'm not sure we're there yet. And I'm not here to criticize or blame anyone. I'm not saying, I'm certainly not sort of finding any fault at anyone. It's, people have to feel that. And that's, if there's one thing that I want to be able to work towards, is that where we can tell our sort of future leaders that you're in the right place. You'll be looked after. You'll have the necessary support. but we can't, you can't promise and guarantee the other things, but at a very basic. And that's really what candidates care about. That's really what membership cares about. You and I know how to manage life problems.
Yeah.
You don't need the college to do it.
Yeah.
But you don't want the college to become a life problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it time to rethink and reshape healthcare in general, especially the delivery of healthcare? And I ask you this question in terms of the training experiences that we've had whilst we've been in clinical medicine, is that X takes a history, X takes a history again, X takes a history again. We've not yet had a uniform medical record. We've still, our junior doctors are still chasing around at the end of the day. Oh, what happened to this guy? What happened to Jerry? He's gone to X number of GPs, he's gone to X number of specialists, and they're spending their time in meaningless work. What's holding us back from fixing those challenges?
I think
we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, all the time. Like
simple solutions, right?
Yeah, incident reviews, sentinel event reviews, and it all leads to the same problem: systemic causes. And I think it's. If I can slightly sort of drift off a bit and just talk about things outside of health. The environmental influences on delivery of healthcare. I think I'm just being very random here. We've mastered the art of healthcare delivery here, not now, a long time ago, in Australia. Comes the college, there comes the medical school, and the partnership between schools, and then the rural, regional, fantastic plan. You cannot get it wrong.
Yeah.
What we're not doing, or what's lacking, is lifting that up and running at a high speed. Back then, our population was much smaller.
Yeah.
Right? So what we built back then was futuristic. Health, I'm talking about. The current population is different. It's not only grown, it's growing exponentially.
Yeah.
And we have a huge proportion of aged population, and that's going to grow too.
Yeah.
I don't know if our current, once futuristic healthcare system, the current one, is actually catered enough to deliver for that. We seem to be, catching the tail and going.
Just on that, there's different points of view of, probably in the 90s, we went towards a very specialist model. We trained a lot of specialists, and, we made general practice not so sexy. And often in the media can glorify and say, general practitioners, they've got a tough life. They see 20, 25 patients a day. The influence of the political effect on general practitioners versus the specialists. There's very little influence on the specialists, but there's all the media stories that you hear is on the generalists that puts away people from getting into generalist training. Is it time we rethink generalist training for the changing population's needs?
I think so. There's a couple of things there. I'm probably not the right person to comment on the generalist training part of it. But I think what we can aim for is to provide that environment. I think providing the opportunities, creating the environments would naturally sort of give that sort of motivation for the colleges and the organizations and the health services to make generalist training a more appealing one. So at the moment, it's thriving. It's actually doing much better than what we all thought.
Yeah.
And that's simply because, people like yourself who can take it in your hand and run the region like that, right? Imagine if you had the frame and the support and the resourcing and the, sort of acknowledgement from the department, from the government, from the community. It's not rocket science. It'll be obvious that generalist, especially this GPs in the metros. I'm not even talking about the regional ones. Will become a sort of an obvious need and an important one.
Have we divided ourselves so much that we've not allowing our health professionals work at the top of their scope of their practice. Pharmacists working at the top of their scope of practice. And we talk about scope of practice often. That's one of our core business, right? And nurse practitioners and all the allied health that can do business really well.
Yeah.
Have we in some way restricted over time?
I think so. I think we have. I don't think it was intentional. And again, this is one of the sort of consequences or the downside of a well-planned system and structure without review and resetting. Some parts of our, some building parts in our system, we don't seem to check. If you go to the corporate side, they constantly review, constantly change, constantly challenge and question themselves.
Yeah.
We don't seem to do that. Well, I think that's what it is. It wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
Talking about, top of scope, COVID was a perfect example.
Yeah.
We all know what we all did. We all know what everyone did. We talked about, what a surgeon could do.
Yeah.
Things that you wouldn't even consider as a joke not too long ago.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think we have to wait for a disaster to happen. We naturally have to, get into that groove to say, where am I going to add the most value and where can I use the rest of my time on? If it means that I want to spend the time with my family, then that's where you should be.
Yeah, sure.
You shouldn't have to be sitting at work for 8 hours and just do the stock standard stuff.
Yeah.
And then that results in structure, reviews and redundancies and stuff. So I think it goes both ways. Even in my current role, the best part of my current job in the Director of Medical Services job is it's very open. 5 years now, I still write my PD every year.
Yeah.
And I do things, finish it up, BAU, and then look for the next one. My boss gives me something else.
Yeah.
Best part of your job.
Yeah.
That not only makes it more rewarding and enjoyable, but it also gives you a very realistic picture of where are you using your skills at the best.
Yeah.
We all get taught that Director of Medical Services means right from credentialing to legal risk.
Yeah.
That's all just 20% of our work.
Correct.
You should be, if I'm training someone, I want you to be able to do anything and everything. Work with the nursing discipline, work with the allied staff, work with security staff.
Yeah.
Do code grey, pick up and do the incident command.
Correct.
I've had the opportunity to do it. I think, and that's the culture difference too, the culture change.
Yeah.
We have to get out of our silhouette of, I'm a doctor, I'm this. You're human, you're part of a community.
Yeah.
We all have to do what we need to do. And it's very enjoyable.
Yeah.
I don't know if we got that right yet. So that's
sure.
the change. Yeah.
Yeah. So Anand, you've managed, large teams, big organization, big settings. How do you foster collaboration when there's different directions, different aspirations at different levels to ensure all healthcare staff are aligned with the organization goals?
Yeah. I don't think anyone can master that. It's a learning, game. For me, there's so many experiences and I'm still learning, but the last 5 years in this current job has been, it's been such an interesting journey and massive amount of growth. I always bring it back to leadership, right at the top, right? So for me, it's about my immediate boss. And, the person above who's a chief executive.
Because you just have control over a few factors.
Yes. Yeah. So, if you think about it like students, teachers and masters, right?
Yeah, right.
You've got to, if you take a high school example where you grew up in, you still remember that primary school, not so much the high school.
Yeah.
Not because of what you ate back then, it's because of that one headmaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking about this language because this is how I remember school. And that's often because of that one person. It's not just an individual who represents that organization, who represents that entire community and the warmth they bring and the style they bring. And then you'd expect that cascades down to the lowest level or the sort of a different, structural sort of layers you have in an organization. So for me, a lot of credit for at least for the successes and the positives that I've gained will go to my boss, who has that sort of, managing a complex team and a portfolio like what we have is not easy. And, she does it really well. So I get inspired that influence makes me want to inspire more people.
Yeah.
So it's a very sort of it's a two-way channel. I always, I've gone through different types of emotions in these sort of, I've managed at least more than few different teams in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's not, some people have one portfolio, you go with it forever. So I've had few different teams, all complex, all different.
Yeah.
And I'm not the subject matter expertise.
Yeah.
That's the best part about all of this. So much fun there. You don't know anything about the actual corporate knowledge.
Yeah.
But then you're going to have to lead it.
Yeah.
And of course, I think for me, it was, I expected the worst at the start. I accepted that there is going to be a lot of resistance. There is going to be a lot of criticism because, I don't want to report to someone or look up to someone who don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But then that changes over time.
Yeah.
So I always start with, giving space, making it very simple and personal. I'm not here to question what you do, what the deliverables are. We'll get to it. But let's build that relationship first. Let's get to know who you are, the teams.
Yeah.
I know these coffee catch-ups and all these social things people don't think of it as much, but it's a useless thing if you just do it without purpose.
Yeah.
Right? When you've got an organization of 20,000 people, when you've got a team with 25 people, 30 people, and you have 6 different sites, really high intense, high demanding jobs, it's next to impossible to get the team delivering and be happy if you don't connect with them as a leader.
Yeah.
So, it quite fit with my profile, the coordinator of training. I'm also a coordinator at work.
Yeah.
Leadership has different meanings, definitions.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't call myself the leader. I'm part of the crew. I have a title, I have a responsibility. No one could spot me in a group of 25 with my team as who's the boss. Very happy about it. Proud to have built a team and working with a team like that, right? So someone else would want to be called as the leader. You'll have these photo shots and the emails going to 1,000 people saying, I care about you. That's one way of leadership that puts me to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm the wrong guy for that. So I think my approach has always been being there, present, connected, and be able to support.
Sure.
In that, there's a selfish interest too. I want to be able to learn what I'm leading too.
Yeah.
So it takes a year or two, and then you master that. Thankfully, the skills that we build, the training that we've done, puts it at that elevated place to just catch things and then go with it. So that's the strength we have as a professional, as a specialty. We don't need that, A to D block. Once you identify it, you can quickly grasp it and then influence the team. So that comes in handy too. So I think it's, if you keep it very simple, people aren't going to like you. That's okay.
And we do have a lot of decisions to make.
Yeah.
Probably 150 emails, 300 emails a day, and split-second decisions to make sure the outcomes are there. And most of the time, 9.9, it goes well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. In terms of working with groups and then managing resistance, and it's human behavior to have resistance to change. And you have in change management, we've got early adapters and a few laggards and things like that. What have been your approaches to managing resistance?
I don't know if I have any one. I think it's the approach. There's the process you follow when it comes to. It depends if it's an individual sort of 1 member, 2 member, 3 member thing. Then we can go with what seems right for the environment.
Yeah.
But if it's more of a group setting and it's a stakeholder resistance, like, for us, it's the doctors and the medical leaders. If there's resistance, I think our approach, I say our because we don't function at work as my team, my unit, my style. It comes as an office, the CMO office. Our approach has always been a collective. We sort of listen, we take time, we understand, and then we take people out separately. Like, on the lighter side, in the movies, you take the bad people, the naughty group out on the side. You don't want to, it's very tempting to throw stones at one person who claims to be the leader because you've got 60 other people sitting next to you.
Yeah.
But when I take you on side, you've seen all these movies where I take you out, show some light. You then start to talk,
Yeah.
then you realize that there isn't a problem. You just want to,
Yeah.
join the party stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it in a lighter sense, but that's
Correct.
really the approach we took.
Yeah.
We told ourselves that we were going to spend the first year when we all took our jobs, we were going to spend the first year just to let people talk.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of history and baggage that we took on,
Sure.
and it wasn't going to be possible for us to change and come on the other side with great success and positivity
Sure.
if we don't stay grounded and take time.
Sure.
And that worked 5 years on.
Yeah.
Now anyone can come and do my job.
Yeah.
If you don't stuff up hugely,
Yeah.
you'll do a reasonably good job and you'll be happy at work.
Because the systems and processes are in
It
place.
was a collective, and
Yeah.
we build it slowly. Yeah.
My last question to you today. I know we've taken a lot of time. We hear of a lot of burnout among health professionals. It's real. A lot of members of our professions have left the profession. Some are considering leaving. We look at the junior doctor reports where say burnout's at the highest level ever. As leaders, what systems do we need to put in place, or what do we need to do in the future?
I mean, this is always going to be a struggle, and I think there are, as leaders, I think if we, the first thing we need to think about is how can you start to think about change or creating a safer environment in your turf, and then align that with your organizational sort of approach, and then comes the systemic, departmental, statewide, countrywide stuff, right? So thinking about just our workforce, I think it's going to be a really difficult problem to tackle if we don't, jump ahead and start thinking about how to change things or how to put controls structurally. Like I'm talking about shifts.
Yeah.
When you recruit someone, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, we could get away with just over-recruiting, under-recruiting and still deliver.
Yeah.
People are burnt out beyond any level after COVID.
Yeah.
That results in people not wanting to continue to work. And it's a loss for them, it's a loss for us too. So I think we had to think about the next 5 years to 50 years and think about top of scope. I think that's, I'm not shying away from burnout.
Yeah.
But the way to address burnout is not just to look at burnout.
Yeah.
It's to look at the other side.
Factors,
Yeah. So, how do you recruit? How do you make sure that you get people to work top of scope from the beginning?
Yeah.
That hopefully eventually would lead to a future state where you have people working the right hours in the right place with the right skill set and the right break and have happy in training too. So it's a massive puzzle to solve. For that, we need good people.
Yeah.
We need people with common sense and intention and passion and a sense of humor. That's all we need.
Yeah.
We all have qualifications. You're not going to get through without it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Anand. It was really a pleasure to learn from you, learn insights from you. And look, I wish you all the best in your upcoming elections.
Thank you, Rex. Thanks.